What's up, everyone? Treadmill Talk today. I'll get my treadmill going here. Thanks for tuning in on a nice Sunday. It's about 80 degrees here in Wisconsin, so a good day. I should be outside, but I'm ready to do Treadmill Talk with you guys. So I got 45 minutes to talk football with you guys. If you got questions, drop them in the comments there. I'd love to answer your questions, trades, player evaluation questions, prospects, whatever it is. So let's talk Treadmill. I'm going to be walking here for about 45 minutes, answering questions, talking football. So let's start with the news of the day. I'm not really sure it's news at all. So it came out this morning that Brandon Ayuk had requested a trade. And this was from the one guy, John, on Twitter, who has sources. And John has been good about reporting some stuff early ahead of the big accounts, but seems to get lost in the message. So I don't know if it's true, but it came out that Ayuk's agent said you need better sources, basically refuting his claim that he's asked for a trade. John has since come out and said, oh, well, there's still more to the story. We'll see what plays out. Basically saying, my sources are good. You're the agent, so you're not going to admit it because you don't want to diminish the things, whatever. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Because here's what happened. If Ayuk gets traded or doesn't get traded, doesn't negate the fact that he may or may not have asked for a trade. The two are not mutual. Just because you ask for a trade doesn't mean you get traded. Just because you didn't ask for a trade doesn't mean you get traded or not. So, does it matter? No. It's all over Twitter right now. That's the news that's been hopping around. People reporting, yes, he's asked. No, he hasn't. Calling one guy out for reporting it, saying he doesn't have sources. Listen, I believe that a guy has sources. Maybe his sources gave him some more speculation than facts. Maybe he actually got facts, and the agent is trying to refute that to try to get the trade value. Don't know. Don't care. Because at the end of the day, whether Ayuk gets traded or not, it doesn't matter if he asks for a trade or not. Because you can ask for it and get traded, not ask for it and get traded. It doesn't matter. Now, do I think Ayuk gets traded? I think there's a strong possibility. I'm putting it at like 70% now that he does get traded. I think the contract's looming. I think the 49ers are looking at future contracts. Brock Purdy's coming up in a couple years. Christian McCaffrey in a couple years. Deebo Samuel, some other pieces. George Kittle's will be on. So can they afford Ayuk? Yes, they can. Do they want to pay Ayuk is the question. Question is, what can they get for Ayuk? Do I think they get a first for him? I think no. Looking at the trades like the Diggs trade, they got a second round for him in 2025. I think Ayuk's probably worth a little more than that. So maybe they get a second and a third. Maybe they get a first from a desperate team. I just don't know what that team is. Pittsburgh's been talked about. Now, can Pittsburgh give up a first? Possibly Pittsburgh is a little higher in the draft, right around the middle in the teens. I don't know. Giants, obviously super high in the draft. Arizona, who has 4 but also 27. Do they give up one? Going to a season with Ayuk, Marvin Harrison, Mike Wilson, really would revamp that offense. Does San Fran trade to Arizona? I don't know. Bills are in contention at 28. This is what I said all along about the Brandon Ayuk as it goes to Stephon Diggs. I didn't like the Stephon Diggs trade. As a Bills fan and as a player, I didn't like the fact that you got rid of your number one wide receiver and can't replace him until 2025. Yes, you can draft a wide receiver at 28 this year, get them all wide receiver, but you still need a wide receiver too. So the way you're just kicking the can of filling a need on team until 2025. Now, if the Bills can take the pick they got for Diggs and maybe a third next year, or even a second this year, and get an Ayuk or a T. Higgins, I'm all for it. I think that's a good trade for them in terms of value. Like, you turn Diggs into a pick, so basically turn Diggs and a third this year, maybe I don't have one this year, next year, into Ayuk or Higgins, I'm all for that. So we'll see. I think the 49ers can easily get a second. They can get what the Bills got for Stephon Diggs for Brandon Ayuk, probably a little more because he's a little younger, a little more production upside. So we'll see. I think he gets traded. I don't know if it happens right away. If it's not a first-round pick, there's no real rush until Friday. So you have all Friday morning. You can really work until Thursday morning. We'll see. So if he does get traded, I think it's going to be a latter half of the first-round pick. So Bills are there. Steelers need a guy. We'll see how it goes. I think he gets traded eventually. If not, I think the 49ers just roll with him. They'll let him go one more year. Maybe franchise tag him. Maybe sign him after the season. Sounds like they're pretty far apart. So I do think he gets traded compared to T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins also gets traded as well. So we could see 2 big-name wide receivers get traded before at the draft. Again, I don't think either of them is worth a first-round pick, but a desperate team might take them. It may come down to the Bills. If Brian Thomas is gone, Adonai Mitchell, if they don't like the receivers that are available at 28, maybe the Bills trade for one of those guys. So we'll see. So in terms of the rumor, don't care if he has or hasn't requested a trade. I never really cared about those things. Just care if it happened or not. Now, you're going to get all the buzz if he's asked for it, he hasn't. He'll unfollowed him. That's all just posturing at this point. That's all it is. Let me know when something happens. So, looking towards the draft, we got 2 weeks. I'm happy to report that I will be at the draft this year again with credentials in the media room, asking questions, talking to some other reporters, talking to fans, talking to those players that are going to be there. So I'm super excited to head to Detroit again, covering the draft for Dynasty Pros. Looking forward to that. So follow me on socials at the DUnit13 on Twitter. Follow Dynasty Pros FF on Twitter. Check out our website. We're dropping some of the draft-specific content from the draft itself there. So it's great. I'll go Wednesday. There's an event Wednesday morning with the prospects. Do some stuff this year with Special Olympics. I have some media availability, so I'll be there. Asking the guys a couple questions. Filming some stuff, do some clips on maybe our TikTok or Instagram, YouTube. Get out of it for you guys. So if there's something you want to know about these players, let me know. Maybe I'll get a chance to ask it to them. You know, I think it's a cool event. There's 13 players going. Some big names, less people than normal. Last year, I think there was 18, 20-some the year before. It's going to go down every year, I think. But excited to go to the draft, report the draft for you guys. I get to do some cool things. So I'm beyond honored that I get to do it every year. It's my second year going to the draft. So it's going to be fun. So let's talk about the draft. I was thinking yesterday, like, what are the burning questions for the draft? I was like, oh, maybe I can do this for my Treadmill Talk. Let's go through each team and give you one or two questions that I think are looming for fantasy for the draft. So let's start in the AFC. AFC East, my Bills. Obviously, I think wide receiver is the big question. Do they draft one at 28, or do they move up to get one? What does that look like? How much do they value the top guys in Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, even Brian Thomas on some level? And do they feel a need to move up to get one? And what's that going to cost them in terms of other draft capital? They don't have a ton of players they can trade. I mean, obviously they have players they can't trade, but no one that's like glaring trade like an Ayuk or Higgins would be. So probably going to be draft capital. They don't have a third this year. So I would hate it if they gave them a first and a second this year. Obviously, they picked up a second next year from Stephon Diggs. So can they use that to package up, move up? Do they even need to move up? Are there guys available? I've been saying all along, I think the Bills get a Keon Coleman and Adonai Mitchell, someone in that range. I think that's what they get at 28. I don't think they have to move, nor do I want to give up draft capital. So the big question for the Bills is, what do they do at wide receiver one? Move up or stay put? Secondary question, I wonder how much the running back 2 position matters for the Bills. Bills have James Cook. Good back at 258 carries or something around that mark last year. I think he had 60-some targets, 50 receptions, so can be a 3-down back. But Latavius Murray was their second back last year, and he got rotated in heavily. So do the Bills spend maybe a 4th-round pick, or they have 2 4th-round picks this year? Do they spend one on a running back to kind of pair with Brandon Cooks, who may also take away some of that pass-catching work? Listen, I interviewed Dylan Lobby. You can check that out on YouTube here a couple months ago, right after the Senior Bowl. I love Dylan Lobby. You know, he has met with the Bills. So do the Bills sign someone like Dylan Lobby, draft him in the 4th round to be kind of that pass-catching back? Takes away some of the value for fantasy for James Cook. So if he doesn't have those receptions on 3rd down, gets taken out of the game, what does it look like? Also, if they bring in a big back, do they bring in one of those like bowling ball goal line guys who takes away some of those works, which is already taken away from James Cook because of Josh Allen, could affect James Cook's value. So curious to see what happens. 3rd day of the draft. That happened on the 2nd day with them not having a 3rd-round pick. 4th round, do the Bills take a running back that possibly eases in James Cook's workload? Something to keep on. So if you have James Cook right now, I'm monitoring that right now. If I see him draft someone, I might try to trade away James Cook for his value before it tanks when we see the trading camp, when we see this rotation happening. Let's continue in the AFC East. Burning questions for each team. New York Jets. Everyone has linked them to Brock Bowers. So is tight end a priority for that team? I've always said no. Looking at Aaron Rodgers' history, he doesn't really value the tight end. And you can say different coordinators, different things. Doesn't matter. Aaron Rodgers runs that offense at the end of the day. You can say it's, you know, he calls Blake audibles. He just doesn't target the tight end enough. Obviously, you have Garrett Wilson out there, who's good, right? You've got playmakers. I think they're going to be fine. I don't see Brock Bowers being a priority for them. I think offensive tackle, offensive line is a priority for them in the first round. Maybe they get a tight end in the second round. We'll see. They did draft a guy last year, Kuntz, who I think was good but not great. Didn't get a lot of playing time behind Uzama and Conklin. We'll see what happens. I just don't think tight end is a priority for them. Now, people want them for fantasy because obviously you put a good tight end with a good quarterback and a good theoretically a good offense. You have good fantasy value. I just don't see there. If Brock Bowers were to go to the Jets, I would definitely be dropping him far in my rankings. I don't have a good. Last week I talked about my potential landing spots for tight ends. I had the Jets third in redraft, second in dynasty, only second in dynasty because Rodgers probably isn't there. I just don't think it's a ton of great value for Brock Bowers. Let's move over to the New England Patriots. The question for me for the New England Patriots is, would you rather have Drake May and, say, Troy Franklin in the second round, or would you rather have Marvin Harrison and a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix or Spencer Rattler? That's the question. Because at 3, the Patriots are in this weird zone where they obviously need the number 1 wide receiver. I've always said I like Kendrick Bourne. I think he's a sneaky fantasy value. But do you rather have the star receiver Marvin Harrison with a good quarterback in Bo Nix, who you can get in the second round, or do you want the top quarterback, which is probably Drake May, maybe Jaden Daniels, maybe J.J. McCarthy, and a second or third tier wide receiver in Troy Franklin, maybe a Lad McConkey, although I think he's gone, maybe Keon Coleman, maybe Adonai Mitchell, maybe Xavier Worthy, someone in that range who's probably a tier 2 or 3 wide receiver with a tier 1 or 2, depending on how you rank them, quarterback. So that's the question. Where do the Patriots value that position, and what do they value more? And how do they rank players? If, for me, it is quarterback, then wide receiver, I'm not buying that wide receiver because I like Kendrick Bourne. I think he's more sure-handed than a rookie would be. If it goes Marvin Harrison quarterback, I'm buying Marvin Harrison and that quarterback because that quarterback's still going to have Kendrick Bourne, sure-handed, right? He's going to have Marvin Harrison to be a better weapon. So, depends on how that goes. I might buy them a little more, move them up my rankings once that happens. So that's my question for the Patriots. Is which way do they go? If you guys have questions about a team, a player, a trade, drop it in the chat on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe. Really helps us out on Dynasty Bros. Try and do this weekly content, Treadmill Talks, every Sunday around this time. 45 minutes when you walk in the treadmill. Today I'm talking questions heading into the draft per team. From the AFC East, we did the Bills, did the Jets, did the Patriots. Now let's talk Dolphins. What do the Dolphins need? Offensive line, nothing really creative for fantasy, but I think we can glean into the type of offense they might want to have based on the type of offensive lineman they go out and get. I think they're going to take an offensive lineman in the first round. Might take corner, defense. But whenever they take an offensive lineman, will show me what they want to be. Do they get one that's really good at pass protection? Show me that they want to throw the ball more, spread it out with Hill and Waddle, the chain coming out of the backfield, or do they get a really good run blocking one? Kind of what they did last year, where they really want to use Mostert and the chain in the running game. That'll give a little glimpse into which one I might value a little more. So if they go out and get a pass catching one, I'm dropping Mostert in my values. Really can't raise up Tyreek Hill much. He's a top 5 wide receiver. It's not going to change. Waddle might get a little bump. A-Chain might get a little bump because he's the pass catching back. So we'll see if they grab a good rush blocking one, for run defense or run offense. Maybe I move Mostert up in my rankings. That's burning questions for AFC East. Let's move over. I always go East, then AFC North. Let's start with the Ravens. Ravens need a wide receiver. They're at the end of the draft. Who's available? And do they move up? Now, they drafted Zay Flowers last year, who I really liked. Love his personality. Think he's a good player. They have Rashad Bateman, who's been disappointing. Have Nelson Aguilar, who has played well. So has Bateman. For them, has played admirable, not great for fantasy. Mark Andrews comes back. They still have Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kohler. But they brought in Derrick Henry as a big running back to complement that offense, and specifically Lamar Jackson. That run option is going to be crazy with Lamar Jackson running out. He can either take it or pitch it to Henry. How do you stop them in defense? So, is wide receiver priority in the first round for the Ravens? And if so, is it enough that they might move up ahead of the Bills, ahead of the Steelers, some of these other teams? to get one of those better wide receivers. We'll see. If they don't, if they go offensive line in the first round, that shows me that they're looking to run more, move up Derrick Henry, especially in redraft, maybe in a 2-year buy down window. If you're trying to win now in Dynasty, that's where we go. So how about Pittsburgh Steelers? Need a wide receiver. Everyone knows they need a wide receiver, and there's nothing they can do about it. Looks like they might try to trade for one. I don't think they can trade for Higgins because I don't think Cincinnati trades him in the division. So can they go out and get Brandon Ayuk? Maybe a Nico Collins? We'll see. Sneaky name in there. I don't know. I don't know if they have the draft capital or the want to trade a lot of their future. Sounds like Russell Wilson is going to be the starter. Justin Fields is the backup. So the question is what do they do at wide receiver across from George Pickens? My fear is that once they get to their draft spot, you lose some of the guys who are different than George Pickens. You've got an Xavier Worthy who's fast and can stretch on the field, kind of what George Pickens does. You get some of those like big name down the field guys like a Troy Franklin, who's very much similar in my mind like George Pickens. So do they get like a Ladd McConkey, who I think is a little bit of a stretch? Maybe they can trade back and get him. So what type of receiver do they get will complement their offense? I think they need to find a Tyler Lockett-like receiver. I think George Pickens is very much like DK Metcalf, that down the field, make the contested catches. They need kind of that route specialist like a Ladd McConkey. So the question for the Steelers is, what type of receiver they get and where do they get it from? Is it trade or draft? Now let's talk about Cincinnati. Obviously, the big question is, what do you do with Brandon Ayuk, or not Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins for Cincinnati? What are they doing with him? Are they trading him or keeping him? Because if you trade him, you have to replace him. Tyler Boyd's gone. And Tyler Boyd, now that's a big question. We'll get to the end because he's still out there free agency. What happens if they trade T. Higgins? Can they get a first? So very much like A.J. Brown got traded from Tennessee to Philadelphia, basically got 16 for him, drafted Treylon Burks to try to replace him. Obviously, that didn't work out because Treylon Burks is not good. So we'll see what Cincinnati does, but the big question is what happens with T. Higgins during the draft? Can they trade him if they want to trade him? Do they draft someone in potential trade? So if Cincinnati goes out and drafts a Brian Thomas in the first round, kind of shows me that maybe T. Higgins gets moved the next day. We did Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Let's go to Cleveland. Looking at Cleveland's offense right now for fantasy, they really don't need a whole lot. Got Deshaun Watson, going to come back. Hopefully, should be good. Nick Chubb's healthy. They signed Deontay Foreman, have Jerome Ford, like their running backs. Joku at tight end. They trade for Jerry Jeudy, have Amari Cooper, have Elijah Moore, have some pieces. So, what does Cleveland do? Again, I think it goes back to the offensive line. Do they spend significant draft capital, so first or second round, on the offensive line? And what does that offensive lineman specialize in? Might tip their hand to what that offense looks like, and might tip their hand to kind of Nick Chubb's rehabilitation. If they lean into the run game with a run-heavy, run specialist offensive lineman, maybe that shows me Nick Chubb might be ready sooner than we think, or sooner rather than later, and they're willing to kind of work that in sooner. If they go more pass protection, maybe the offense wants to be more passing, spread the ball out, which also might mean that Nick Chubb might be ready. Not a definite, but could be. So those are the draft questions for the AFC North. Did AFC East before this? Treadmill Talks on Sunday. Hit the like, subscribe, drop a question. Got it. Willing to change topics if you guys got questions. Want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. Let's move over to the AFC West. Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs. Listen, in all my mock drafts, I have been taking Ladd McConkey at 32. Makes sense to me. They need a route technician. Travis Kelce is good. He's also 30-plus years old. Has talked about the injuries and the wear and tear on his body. Seems to be loving life outside of football right now. Not saying he's not as committed, but one more year, then what? They brought in Hollywood Brown to be the guy. They had Rashee Rice. Now, Rashee Rice's situation's up in the air. Does he go to jail? Does he get suspended? My thought process is listening to Drew Davenport. So if you don't follow Drew Davenport on Twitter, he's the guy you want to follow for any legal stuff. Lawyer uses that lawyer experience and knowledge to kind of give some insight into what has actually happened versus these other reports that are just speculating. Does Rashee Rice get jail time? Maybe, probably not. Now the max, everybody goes, it's up to the sentence. Yes, it could be up to 10 years. He's probably going to get probation on some level. They'll probably plead it down. That's what happens. They'll plead down this case, but he probably still gets suspended. My guess would be 4 games. So what does that mean for the offense? Do the Chiefs get a Ladd McConkey type So does the Rashee Rice questions about Rashee Rice make wide receiver more of a definite first-round pick for the Chiefs? So what do? Is Hollywood Brown enough for them to get through those 4 games, 5 games, whatever it is? Do they know a little bit more about the Rashee Rice situation and his availability? We'll see what happens. Let's go over to the Denver Broncos. We know they need a quarterback. Can Denver move up to get a quarterback, or will a quarterback be there for them? Theoretically, yes, a quarterback will be there for them. Is the quarterback they should draft? Probably not. It looks like Minnesota's going to move up, take J.J. McCarthy, or one of the big 4, leaving basically Michael Penix or Bo Nix for Denver. I don't think they're worthy to be taken in the first round at, I think, 11 or 12 where Denver's drafting. So the question is for Denver, what do they do at 12? I think they go on defense, get a pass rush because it's a need. I think Jarrett Stidham can get them by. I think they've gone in this year knowing, hey, we're probably going to have to roll with Stidham or a second-round pick of Penix or Bo Nix or Spencer Rattler this year, and then next year we'll get a guy. I don't think it was a plan to get a guy this year. Now, obviously, they'll try. They will try to move up to get a J.D. McCarthy, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. I don't think one of them falls that far. I think it's going to be very much a top-heavy quarterback draft, 4 in the top 10. It's going to be just outside. It might be 4 in the top 5. So does Denver just go kind of punt the quarterback position for this year? Which, for me, for fantasy, is interesting for Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. And that's where training camp's really going to be important for those guys, because if it is Jarrett Stidham or a rookie, we want to see which guy's going to have the connection. I don't think Marvin Mims is that good. I like Cortland Sutton, so if I'm drafting right now, I'm buying Cortland Sutton. I'm going to draft him early, kind of pass on Marvin Mims. Greg Dulcich, the tight end, coming back. Does he have some connection with Jarrett Stidham? So a lot of questions there on what Denver does at quarterback. Let's go to the Raiders. Now, everyone's saying, oh, Raiders are up there to take a guy. Raiders aren't taking a quarterback, guys. Writing's on the wall. They like Aiden O'Connell. They signed Minshew to be a backup if O'Connell's not that good. I don't see a world in where the Raiders take a quarterback first, second, or third round, to be honest with you. Maybe they get a Sam Hartman in the 4th or 5th. Maybe they get a Joe Milton in the 5th or 6th. Like, I just don't see them taking a guy that's going to come in and compete right now. I could be wrong, but all the talk and all the look is that they want Aiden O'Connell to be the guy. They're going to give him every opportunity to be the guy. And if he's not, it's going to be Minshew. That's why they signed Minshew. So I like that for Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer, because they have familiarity with Aiden O'Connell. And Minshew's been good enough that he can learn that system quick enough to get in there. So does the Raiders go out and get another offensive guy in the 1st or 2nd round? Probably not. I don't think they take a running back in the 2nd round. I think they like Zamir White. Maybe in the 3rd round they get a guy. We're seeing a lot of these running backs go 2nd and 3rd rounds. So maybe. Secondary question is, does Zamir White hold his spot after day 2? So in the 3rd round, do the Raiders go out and get a running back to kind of compete with Zamir White? That would kill his value. Right now, Zamir White is a basically bell cow back. Filling in that Josh Jacobs role. I don't know if he holds that out. He made it through free agency. I'm not sure he makes it through the draft. So if you have Zamir White right now for Dynasty, it's a risky proposition. Do you trade high on the value, or do you just hold? I'm personally going to hold and hope for the best, because even if it's a 3rd-round running back, unless it's one of the big names like a Braylon Allen or Blake Corman, not super worried about it. I think he gets first crack at being the guy. Let's move over to the Chargers in the AFC West. We're talking questions for each team. Hit a like, subscribe, drop your questions in chat. Honestly, the Chargers' big question is who's catching the ball from Justin Herbert. Right? They traded Keenan Allen, let Mike Williams go, let Gerald Everett go. Let Austin Eckler go, their top 4 receivers. So you're talking Quentin Johnson, who has not been great. Josh Palmer, who is good, not great. Chargers are sitting at 5. Do they just take Marvin Harrison if he's there? What if Marvin Harrison's not there? What if Arizona stays put, Marvin Harrison's gone? What if there's a case where Marvin Harrison goes to the Patriots and Malik Neighbors goes to the Cardinals? What do the Chargers do then? Probably trade someone looking for a quarterback. But the expectations are going to get one of the big 2 wide receivers, Harrison or Neighbors. What does that look like? I'm wondering who else fills out that rotation with them. I don't think they can only leave this draft with 1 wide receiver. I think they need to take a 2nd one, probably in the 3rd round. And then when do they take their running back? Because we know Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball. You can look at his history. That's what he wants to do. Does he get Blake Corum in the second round? Does he wait to the third round and get someone else it's taken for him? We'll see. I think that's going to be the big question for me is which way do they prioritize their offense? There's a chance for me that I think the Chargers could trade back, get a Roma Doomsday, pick up some picks, and still get Blake Corum in there and really specialize in the run. Maybe pick up Roma Doomsday in the mid-round with Denver, pick them up, at 12. Maybe they go back, get an offensive lineman, get a Roma Doomsday, get an offensive line with the other pick, then play Corum in the second. Maybe you can really see the offense. The question for the Chargers is, what's that offense going to look like come Monday morning after the draft? So we did AFC East, AFC North, AFC West. Let's move to the AFC South now. Questions for the draft. Let's start with Indianapolis Colts. Do they move on from Alex Pierce at this point? Listen, they drafted Alex Pierce 2 years ago. Kind of this down the field stretcher. Tall guy. I thought he was going to be better than he was. Hasn't really shown out. They drafted Josh Downs, who looked good. Didn't really take over the draft spots from Alex Pierce. So do they decide to just go and get another weapon? There's an outside talk of them getting Brock Bowers. I don't think they need a tight end. I like Kylan Granson. I think they do too. They've obviously got Will Mallory, Jelani Woods, Mo Ali Cox. They've always seemed to bring in tight ends. I don't think they go out and get a big one right away. I don't think they need that. So, but the question is, second round, or maybe even the first, do they replace Alex Pierce with Brian Thomas, with Xavier Worthy, with Adnan Mitchell, Keenan Coleman, Roma Doomsday? We'll see. If they go through the first and second round and don't take a wide receiver, I'm willing to buy Josh Downs and Alec Pierce in that offense with Anthony Richardson coming back. That's where I'm at. Hold on one second, guys. Let me figure out what this sound is. Clicking there. I don't know. Probably a toy in the belt for my son. So that's the Colts. Let's move up. Let's move around the division. Let's go to the Houston Texans. Big question for me is, when do they start looking towards the future? We saw them trade. Hold on. Let me fix that. That's driving me nuts. So the Houston Texans traded for Stephon Diggs, which I think was a great trade. My question is now, what's next? Because at some point, they got to start looking for the future. Here's the deal with the Houston Texans. Let's see if that fixed that sound. Houston Texans obviously got Diggs, have Nico Collins, have Tank Dell. That did not fix that problem. What problem is next year in the offseason, Collins and Diggs are free agents, leaving them tanked up. Now they could sign one or both of them. They signed Dalton Schultz to a long contract after a one-year deal. Texans don't have a first-round pick. They traded that already. Don't have a second-round pick next year. So do they spend a second-round pick this year, or maybe a third, drafting a wide receiver in looks for the future, in the thought process that Nico and Diggs are gone next year? If they do, in Dynasty, I'll be buying that guy, stashing him on my taxi squad. I think he has value after this year. So if they send a second or third round pick this year on a wide receiver, which I think they could, because it's a deep class, that guy I'm drafting late in my drafts, because he's not going to have a ton of value this year, I'm going to stash him on my taxi squad. So that's what I'm looking at the Houston Texans. Do they start looking forward to the future? That's the question I want to know. Did the Colts? Did the Texans? Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans. Whew. It's hot in here. It's 80 degrees outside, so it's getting warm in here right by the window. Tennessee Titans. Same kind of question. Do they look towards the future a little bit? I think they draft Joe Alt in the first round. I think he'll be there for him at 6. So I think he's the clear pick for me for them. Protect Will Levis. But do they look to maybe Hopkins being kind of gone after this year, kind of giving up on Treylon Burks, brought in Deontay Johnson? Maybe he's okay. Do they draft a third wide receiver in the second or third round, just like Houston, to try to build something for the future, bolster out that receiving core? They have Nick Westbrook-Akine, who I think they like, and I kind of like as a deep best ball play. Don't love him for Dynasty, but do they want to replace Treylon Burks outright? Does Treylon Burks even make the team? So we'll see. So AFC South, Colts, Texans, Titans. Last one, Jacksonville Jaguars. What do they do with their picks? I think they're going to focus on defense. Need to focus on offensive line a little bit too. And that, to me, like these other teams, will kind of hint at what their offense is going to be. I've always said Trevor Lawrence is okay, not great. I think he's a middle of the road 12 to 17 ranked quarterback in the NFL and for fantasy. Doesn't put up the numbers. Does he take a step forward this year? Now, they lost Calvin Ridley, brought in Gabe Davis, who I think is a downgrade. Is Christian Kirk still a number one? We'll see. So do they get a wide receiver or do they get offensive line? I think they focus on defense first round. What are they doing? Do they get a guy that's really good for pass protection or for run blocking to allow Travis Etienne to be the focal point of the offense and take Bigsby? We'll see. So those are our questions for the AFC. Been doing this now for 30 minutes. We got about another 15. Let's hit that NFC real quick. Eagles. Do they draft a tight end in the second round this year? Dallas Goedert is the same age that Zach Ertz was when they drafted Dallas Goedert. So the Eagles have always been good about drafting a guy, letting him sit for a year or two, especially the tight end position, and then maturing him into that offense. So do they do the same thing and get one of these second-tier guys? Now, we know Brock Bowers. There's this whole list of like 5, 6 guys, 7 guys who could be the tight end too. Do the Eagles get one in the second round? And do they let him sit for a year, kind of work him in slowly? If they do, I'm drafting them. It's attaching on my taxi squad because my taxi squad, I'm looking 2025, 2026 production. That's a question for them. Giants, what do they do? I think they have to get a wide receiver at some point. I have also said in my mock draft that I dropped on DynastyProsFootball.com a couple weeks ago, my 3.0 version, I had the Giants trading out of their spot, but then with the Cardinals trade out, trade back. And actually, the Giants trade back up and get Brock Bowers. If I was a betting man, I would put some money down on the Giants drafting Brock Bowers. They have Darren Waller. They brought Darren Waller in last year as this big free agent signee. Kind of showed that they wanted to run their offense through that. He has not committed to playing this year. He has talked about retirement. The fact that he hasn't committed yet shows me that he's leaning more towards not playing than playing. Obviously, they want a decision before the draft. He has said he wants to give them a decision before the draft so they know what to do. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft Brock Bowers. A few days later, we find out Darren Waller will retire and Brock Bowers is the main tight end. If that's the case, you're talking about offense, a passing offense, Daniel Jones, Brock Bowers, Wandale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt. Not the best of Sterling Shepard. Like Brock Bowers could be the focal point. So I think Brock Bowers to the Giants is an outside sneaky play for the first round, especially in the draft position they're at. He'd be a good pick for them there. You could see a world where it goes 4 quarterbacks. Joe Alt. And I go, well, maybe receiver. Maybe we take Marvin Harrison if he's there. I think if Harrison and Neighbors are there, they take him. But if not, I think they could take Brock Bowers, especially if they trade back a couple picks for someone who wants one of those guys. Because you can get a receiver in the second round. If you can trade out of, I want to say there's 7. They can move back. Maybe they're 11. I can't remember what the Giants are. They can move back a couple picks, still get Brock Bowers, pick up a second-round pick, and they can still get a receiver there. So Brock Bowers to the Giants, something to think about. Sneaky play. I wonder what the odds are on DraftKings, other sports books, if you're a gambling person. I'm not a gambling person. I don't recommend gambling, but that's what you're into. I might see what the odds are, maybe throw a couple bucks down. Eagles, Giants, Cowboys. Question is, when do they take a running back and who? Second round, I think they're going to be the first or second running back off the board. I think we can see a team jump ahead of them to get a running back, very much like the Bills did last year, jumped ahead of them to get a tight end because they thought Dallas wanted a tight end. So I think everyone knows that Dallas wants a running back in the second round. Middle to late second round, I think we could see a team that needs a running back jump ahead of them to get their guy. If you're the Dallas now, I think Dallas wants Jonathan Brooks. Their doctor did the surgery, so they have a little insider, maybe a little more insider information on how that's going. When Dallas take a running back, I think it's going to be second round. I think they'll be the second. I actually think they'll be the second running back off the board to Dallas. Washington Commanders, quarterback at 2. Who do they take? Is it Dayton Daniels? Is it Drake May? Adam Schefter said in podcast that, hey, Giants fans, you can start buying your Dayton Daniels jerseys. I've always said I think it's Jaden Daniels. I think the moves they've made shows that it's Jaden Daniels. I don't think it's Drake May. The only way I think it's Drake May is if there's a team that wants to trade up with him and they can drop back. So, can they move back to 3 with the New England? Maybe. But I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels to the Commanders at 2. The question is, who's he throwing to besides Sarah McLaurin? Can they get a receiver in the second round? We don't know. AFC North, Lions. The offense is set. Are they a sneaky outside play to get a receiver in the second round? Jameson Williams has been potential to be good. We know Amaron's great. Can Jameson Williams step up and do need a third guy to come in there to compete for targets just to be kind of a route run? Can they get a Luke McCaffrey? Can they get a Ricky Pearsall? Can they get one of those type of guys? Maybe those third-tier guys. Get them in the late second. Allow them to be kind of route technicians. Might be an interesting buy for Dynasty. Minnesota Vikings, obviously we know quarterback's the issue. Unless Stark they're willing to roll with Sam Darnold. I think they will, no matter who they start with. I think Sam Darnold gets the week 1 start for Minnesota, no matter who they draft, unless they trade up and get a top 3 guy. Unless they get a Caleb Williams, a Jane Daniels, or Drake May. I don't think JJ starts week 1. No, he could. I think he'll be fine. I think that's just going to be an interesting one to see how that goes. So, am I buying Sam Darnold in Dynasty? Yes. I think that rookie's going to struggle. I think they might let him sit a little longer. They've seen what the Packers have done, letting the guy sit for a year, 2, 3. Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. So maybe they let him sit all year behind. Sam Darnold just kind of punt this year, and we'll see. Chicago Bears, we know they're taking Caleb Williams. What do the Chicago Bears do at 9? I don't know. Everybody said, oh, they could get Roma Dunze at 9. I don't think they need a wide receiver. Like, you got Keenan Allen, got DJ Moore. Yes, theoretically, you need a guy for next year, but you can get one of those in the second round. I think you're better off looking at an offensive line or edge at 9. So the question is what do they do at 9 for the Bears? Packers, do they dress the offense at all? I mean, realistically, got great receivers. You spend a ton of draft capital on those. Same thing's a tight end. Jordan Love looks good. You sign Josh Jacobs, let Aaron Jones go. You bring back A.J. Dillon. I've always said I like the Packers. If they could get Dylan Lobby in the 3rd, I would love it just because I like Dylan Lobby and he'd be close to home or close to me anyway. We'll see what happens. So, do they do anything that changes the fantasy value for their players this year? Unless they take an offensive lineman, I don't think the fantasy values change for the Packers. NFC West, Seattle Seahawks. Don't need a running back. Don't need a wide receiver. Really don't need a quarterback. They've got Geno Smith. They've got Sam Howell behind them now. We'll see what happens. My question is do they draft a tight end in the 2nd or 1st round? Does Seattle go out there and say, hey, we want to start prioritizing that position? They brought back Noah Fant, who's been meh since leaving Denver. Really has been meh his whole career. Everybody had high hopes for him going to Seattle. Just wasn't an offensive ran. Under a new coach, new offensive coordinator, is the tight end a little bit of a higher priority. Obviously, you have to get behind Lockett, Metcalf, JSN, and target share, but can he be a little more a focal point? So I'm curious to see what that looks like if they draft a guy in the 1st or 2nd round of tight ends and what he gets used in the offseason as we get into training camp. San Francisco 49ers, obviously the question we talked about already. Brandon Ayuk, does he get traded? Does he not? If he gets traded, how do they replace him? Arizona Cardinals, obviously need a wide receiver at 4. I think it's going to be Marvin Harrison. But does Arizona possibly trade out and then trade back up? Very much like they did last year. Last year they traded out with Houston, traded back, and then also traded back up for Paris Johnson. Do they do the same thing this year? I think it's highly possible. I think it makes a lot of sense for them to trade out of 4 to Minnesota, who needs a quarterback, and then trade back up into 7 or 8. Still get either Neighbors or Marvin Harrison, depending on how the draft goes. If not, they have a ton of holes, so them just trading out, picking up picks, makes a lot of sense for them to trade out in general. Arizona, San Fran, Seattle. Last one with the Rams. When do the Rams start looking for the future? Listen, Matthew Stafford has talked about retirement for 2 years now. Well, he's 1 injury away. And they've done Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz. What do they do as a backup this year? Do they take a Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler, Jordan Travis, who I think would be the steal of the draft, to kind of sit behind Stafford, learn for a year? So if the Rams take a quarterback, one of those guys, if they take Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Jordan Travis, the other guy I'm drafting, stashing on my bench, he's probably going to be the starter in 2025 when Stafford's gone. Just keep that in mind. That's when we're looking. That's how you get the edge in Dynasty. Can't just look this year. You got to kind of look ahead, especially later in your rookie drafts. 3rd, 4th round, I'm looking at who might get a start next year if all the guys getting starts this year are gone. That's the NFC West. Northeast, done. Let's do South. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Listen, they're all in this year, right? Re-sign Mike Evans for probably 1 more year. Brought back Baker Mayfield. My question is do they get a 2nd running back next to Rachaad White? I don't think Chase Edmonds is it. I think they do. Rachaad White has been so inefficient per carry with his yards per carry number. Just don't love it. So I think they bring a guy Thank you guys for watching. We got another 5 minutes. Going to finish up the NFC South. But if you're enjoying this content, if you guys can hit a like and subscribe, drop a comment, a thumbs up on the YouTube. Really helps me out. Hit me up on Twitter. Follow me. I'll be at the NFL Draft in person, covering it this year again. So look forward to that. I do that for you guys. It's fun for me, but I enjoy covering you guys. I like doing these treadmill talks. Get a little sweat going, talking football. Rest of the NFC South, Atlanta Falcons. Is Darnell Mooney enough for them? Drake London, Kyle Pitts, now Kirk Cousins. Is Mooney a good enough player for them as a wide receiver too that they don't address that position early, like second or third round? I think he is. I think Darnell Mooney is going to be better for real football than he will for fantasy. One of those all-practice guys running a ton of routes. Best ball I'm taking Darnell Mooney because he is that big shot play. We'll see what happens. He could be similar to what Justin Jefferson, the role in that offense of him being the down-the-field guy more than Drake London. Kind of out on Drake London. I think his value is going to drop a little bit. But is Darnell Mooney enough for the Atlanta Falcons that they don't address that position in the second or third round? Carolina Panthers. Again, another sneaky landing spot for Brock Bowers. Carolina has decent receivers. Adam Thielen. They brought in the guy who I can't remember now. What do? Do they go out and get a receiver? But I think they can take Brock Bowers if he falls in the first. Sneaky pick there. They don't have first, be the second round. Maybe they trade up. Maybe they take Javion Sanders, some of these other tight ends. I'm looking for a playmaker there in Carolina. I think they need a running back. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's there. So who Carolina spends basically the first pick in the second round, who they spend that on, if that's a skill position player, would be high on him for dynasty drafts. New Orleans Saints. Do they draft a running back in the second round? Is the question I have for them. Alvin Kamara's getting old. Kendrick Miller's been okay. Jamal Williams is not. Do they go, hey, we're just going to let's move on? I'd have to look at the contracts. Can they cut Jamal Williams? Like post June 1 and save some money if he's not been good? Can they get a guy to replace him? What do they do in the second round? I don't think they do it in the first. Obviously, we know running backs don't go in the first that often. Don't think they look a receiver. I think Olave, Shaheed, good enough. Jawan Johnson at tight end. Maybe Brock Bowers is far enough for them. And then do the same, start looking to the future. The Saints are known for kicking the can on their salary cap situation. At some point, they go, hey, we just need to get a quarterback. So can they get a Bo Nix? Michael Penix in the second round? I think the Saints could draft a quarterback before the Raiders or the Giants do, to be honest with you. I think they could take a guy, let him sit for a year, learn, throw him in the next year, maybe the end of this year, because Derek Carr has just not been great, but his contract's so big. So that's been my questions for every team going into the draft this year. Like I said, I'll be at the draft this year, covering it again. So follow me on Twitter at the DUnit13. Hit a like and subscribe on YouTube at Dynasty Bros Football. If you're watching this, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Be here every week, right around this time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, my time. Talking football, walking on the treadmill for you guys for 45 minutes. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hey, I just want to mention one more thing. Fantasy Football Expo, wore their shirt last week, forgot to mention it. Coming up in August, every year in August, in Canton, Ohio, there's a Fantasy Football Expo. If you're a fantasy football player, I highly recommend coming. It's a weekend event. There's events Friday. Saturday, there's panels, drafts going on, a draft night out. You can buy your ticket for that. And Sunday's the actual expo. There's a ton of booths with all these companies who do giveaways, who give out information. Also a great time to meet me, other contributors in the space. So your favorite analyst is probably going to be at the Fantasy Football Expo. It's a great opportunity in Canton, Ohio. It's not that expensive. We do it every year. This is, I think, the 10th year or so. Fun event. So check it out, the Fantasy Football Expo on Twitter, on YouTube, on Google. Just Google Fantasy Football Expo. Come check it out this August. It's worth it. Went last year first time. Had a blast. Hope we can go back this year. Hope to see you guys there. Again, thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys next week.